Hi and welcome. This is Kathleen from Sunny Mountain Pattern. This is the button-down garden kimono top. That's actually the crossover option. It's a different video. This is generally what the back looks like. So here's a wonderful drawing of the steps we're going to go do and the second page, because I drew some of these way too big, with optional elastic. So first we're going to match the button plackets by making sure that the wrong sides are folded in and the right side of the button placket goes to the right side of the front. And we're going to go ahead and sew those in place. If you have a serger, go ahead and serge it in place. That's cool. And it's already finished. The edge is already finished, I should say. No, that would be awesome. You just want to do one seam and the whole thing's finished. So again, right sides together, we're going to fold it in half lengthwise and have the raw edges meet with the raw edges of the garment. Sometimes you can get away without even pinning it, but for beginners, please do pin it. If you're more experienced, feel free to ignore me. So then we're going to attach the shoulders, right sides together. This is woven, so you probably don't even need to really pin it if you're really good. You can just wing it. But if you're a beginner, do not wing it. Please use pins or clips. Don't poke yourself. I'm shaking my head. So now we're going to prep the sleeves. This is the same for short sleeve versus long sleeve. It's just longer, that's it. You match up the wrist facing, I think I called it, the wrist facing. And then we're going to fold over like that after we're done sewing it. So that creates a nice clean finish. It also provides casing if you want to put it in the optional elastic. The elastic I used is a 1/2 inch wide, I believe. So after we've sewn it, we're going to plop it open and then try to press or top stitch, if you prefer, the butt plackets up. And then now we're going to put in some neck facing. I'm using double fold bias tape. You can certainly make your own to match, but it's going to fold on the inside. If you really, really want it to be on the outside, go ahead and just fold it in half instead of all the way over. And pin it carefully along the fold so that it stays put. If you really need to and you're having a difficult time, you can go ahead and slightly clip by about 1/4 inch the neck area so it sits nicer. This should actually be very easy to do because the bias tape is already supposed to be a little stretchy, right? And then we're going to cut the bias tape with a little tail so you can fold it in when you're done. So here I'm actually clipping it after I've sewed it in just so it sits nicely when I fold over the bias tape. You can either choose to double fold it and have a very thin band on the inside or leave it flat completely. It just depends on how nimble your fingers are and what you choose. I have chosen to leave it flat, so I folded in that little extra bit and then we're going to sew it down. Same thing with that side. I had about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. Do however much you want, just be reasonable. And then fold it all the way over. So you could of course fold this completely in half. It'll just be a much thinner but more difficult band to sew. So I'm trying to make sure it's all smooth and is not sticking out. I need to be in front of the mic, sorry. So I want it to be all smooth so that when we sew it in, it'll look nice on the other side. So then we're going to do a similar treatment for the sleeves. We're going to make casing or just a fold over for the wrist. So I fold it in half and push the seam allowance in towards the sleeve. This is on the wrong side, of course, of the sleeve. If you have thicker elastic than the 1/2 inch, go ahead and make that fold over only 1/4 of an inch. And then you can also make the seam allowance less than 3/8 of an inch. So half an inch is bigger, 1/4 inch. If you're good enough to do that, I am not. So same thing here, it's folded in half and over. You of course can make that, like I said, a little thinner, so that's slightly thinner. It will give you a bit more room to work with. Also remember, you want to make sure that your safety pin can fit through this. The other hack to do this is to put a cord in while you're doing. while you're putting this in, all the way at the bottom so it doesn't get sewn in. And then tying the elastic to it and pulling it through if you want to get elastic in it. Elastic is optional. It does look incredibly adorable. I'm going to tell you that right now. It's my little guy. The last 2 days I've been running around one of these. So make the elastic about an inch longer than half the width of the opening. Depends on how tight you want it or how elasticy your elastic is. So I string 2 safety pins. One is going to be attached to the end, so we end up springing out the back end and be all mad because I got to redo it. I forgot to do it earlier and I had to redo this. So then you just gently move the safety pin that fits inside the casing all the way over. I sort of cut out the whole in-between part because it popped open and got stuck. I had to juice it. So that's it together, and we just see it didn't pop out. I'll put it there, and then I'm gonna sew the elastic together. Or sorry, tack it down so it doesn't fall off. Not sew it together. We're doing the sleeve on the flat. So I cut the center for the sleeves. So I notched it very precisely. I did not. I just made sure it wasn't too deep. And then we're gonna match the center to the shoulder seam on the right sides with the right sides together. This, of course, is exactly the same as if it was a long sleeve. It's just long sleeve uses slightly more fabric, yo. So, trying to save money. It's also why I'm redoing all of these button-down shirts into outfits. So here's the same idea. We're finding the notch, which of course I forgot to put in. There we go. Right sides together. If you're doing this with plain fabric that's not got an obvious right side or wrong side, please make sure you're pinning it to the correct side. I have an entire top where the left-hand side is sewn inside out. So we're just going to sew down that line. You can see it's pretty much a straight line. Traditionally, the shoulder is actually straight. This is a modern interpretation for slightly easier, better fit. So now we're going to sew the sides. I recommend starting from the wrist and then going down. If you have the side seam flapped out towards the sleeve, which is unusual, this makes it easier to sew. Usually you would move the seam for the sleeve towards the shoulder, but in this case, we're doing it towards the wrist. Same thing on this side. I had to flip it over because the way the pins were going to go. So a zoom version. You want to line up all the pieces as accurately as possible, I suppose. I don't know, it's kids' clothes, it's pretty loose. So see how I flap it over the seam allowance? That's what you want. Makes it easier. If you try to do it the other way, you're going to have some gaping holes because you're going to miss a corner. So now that we have that done, we're going to hem by double folding 1/2 inch each. You might have to make it a little narrower depending on how tall your child's torso is. I found out apparently my children are quite tiny. So this is the rest of it zoomed. I am not measuring because I'm eyeballing it. Not that good, I'm just eyeballing it for speed. You can of course use a ruler to make sure that's even across the entire the entire length. Width? Diameter? I don't know. So if you have the curved sleeves, you probably want to pink it or somehow slash it because it's curved so that it fits better. Pinking is a great idea because that helps finish the fabric as well. If you're using a serger, then just leave it as is and then press it afterwards. I think I show how to press in this video. So now we're marking, placing snaps or buttonholes. This, of course, depends on how big your buttons are. I have a hate relationship with buttonhole makers, so I put snaps in. So I've marked where I want to put them in even amounts. You can, of course, make more, have them closer together or farther apart if you have bigger buttons. The buttons will have to be vertical for this. And there's a snap. So I actually got asked to put in instructions with snaps or buttonholes, but again, I hate my buttonhole maker, so we shan't be doing that today. So those are the two types of snaps. You want one for the top and one for the bottom. We're going to just put the first one in, and that is a loud red, I just realized. Okay, also, if you're putting in snaps, make sure you don't put on the thickest part. You can, of course, reinforce the placket if you're putting snaps in with some interfacing. I just did not do that because that's a little bit extra work. So we're going to use the handy dandy cam snaps press. I do love them. I do not get paid to say that. Not yet, anyway. And squeeze the bejesus out of it. I have been told. You should squeeze the dickens out of it. And then we're going to put the other side in. Make the hole bigger. Do not stab yourself with the stiletto. And safely put the stiletto away so the children don't grab it and hurt themselves. Or you. So we're going to put the other side in. Of course, if you're doing buttons, you do vertical buttonholes. And then sew on the buttons using your buttonhole function, which I've never figured out how to use on any of my machines. Or do it by hand, which is what I usually do. And then snap. There, see? Probably more than one. So now, if the sleeves are not fitting nicely because they are woven, you can, of course, press it. I just use a little pen or a chopstick and encourage it outwards and then press it. So it's nice. It's got that nice little curve because that's a design feature. It's traditional. I didn't make it up. I'm just going to be honest here. So that's the thing with the fake buttons on there. They're not actually sewn on because, again, I hate buttonholes.